Yes?
Were you mad that Rock was replaced by Silent and Pokemon Boy?
It was very sad for me because I really love Brock and I enjoy doing him. The great thing too about being in there and working on Brock is a lot of the main cast, like Ash and Dawn and Brock and all the characters that were in there, a lot of times they'll go to us first when there's a creature that comes along. They'll go, hey, you know, can you do something for Chimchar? Can you do something for Croagunk? So that's how, like, I got a lot of those parts. So when the new season had started, since Brock had run off to become a Pokemon doctor, I was still working on scripts, but they brought in some new actors because we have Iris and Silent are the new trainers that are running along with Ash. So they're doing a lot of the new creatures, and I was like, hey, you know, I'd love to come back and do some work, you know, some creature work or other characters to come in. And they recently called me back in to do some creatures, so there's going to be some characters that are going to be popping up soon, like different Pokemon creatures that I've gotten to voice again. So I'm happy to be back in the studio and recording, because while it is fun working on the adaptations, it's a blast being in there and recording. So yeah, I mean, I'm back on the show, but it is sad because Brock is gone, and you know, he was just, you know, for years it was so much fun to be, you know, to be working with. So yeah, it's a little heartbreaking, but you know, here we get. Yes.
How do you invent a voice for your character?
Invent a voice? Well, a lot of times, what happens is when a new character comes along, even if it's just like a gym leader will come in, they'll be like, well, we need a voice for this, and this is what the Japanese sounds like, and we'll try to get as close as we can, but, you know, we kind of bring our own stuff to the table as well, and there'll be a casting call for that character, and like a bunch of the actors, whether they're, you know, like, because I was also Drew, and it's been so many years. I know I've been a variety of different human characters in the show as well. And what would happen is, like, sometimes while I'm doing that, they'll be like, oh, come in and audition for this, and I'll do an audition, and then they might have other people come in, and then the producers will pick blind. Like, when we go into the studio, the directors know, like, oh, this is Bill, and then, you know, this is Joe, and this is, you know, Mark, and this is, you know, and they'll record all those, but they'll just send it as, like, you know, Drew, audition A, B, C, and then the producers will be like, just by listening, they'll be like, we really like the sound of B. So then they'll go with that actor, and then we'll go in and we'll do the voices for it. With the creature work, the director has kind of gotten an ear for it now to know what we can do. So if it's like a really big burly Pokemon, they may be like, well, we want this guy because he's really good in that lower range. Or if it's somebody who's a little higher, they might want, you know, somebody else to do it. But, you know, we kind of, the Pokemon every once in a while, especially the starters, they'll do like an open call audition for that, where like all the actors will come in and audition for that creature, and then they'll cast from there. But along the way with the miscellaneous ones that come through, it's like, well, yeah, there's a couple cues here, so let's see if we can get somebody who's good at this, just to, you know, kind of fill that in.
Do you get asked to do voices a lot? Like people talk to each other?
Like at conventions? All the time. On the street, no, because people usually don't know who I am. When people find out who I am, I get a lot of, you rock, hey, do that voice, do that voice. But yeah, I mean, I get that, you know, from time to time. And then there are people who are like, oh yeah, my kids watch that show, and they don't know what it sounds like or who it is, so I don't get requests usually from the parents, because they're like, yeah, my kid's got 1 million of those cards and the toys, and he's playing the game all the time, and whatever, good luck to you.
It's like, no, thanks.
Sometimes they're like, oh, I spent so much money on that game, you know, or they're buying all those cards for my kid. And I'm like, hey, I just do the show. There was another.
Are you gonna do any more characters for Pokemon too?
I voiced a bunch of new Pokemon. Not really allowed to say anything just yet. The episodes that we recorded a couple weeks ago, they'll probably air later in the summer, earlier in the fall. So see if you can spot me. And then of course at the end when they flash the credits by really fast, if you have a good eye, you'll see if I'm in the credits to confirm that. I know Cartoon Network has a habit. They used to do it where
They shrink it.
they would roll the credits and then like have something going on the sidebar, and now it's just like a little square in the corner is like another advertisement's going on. So it's kind of hard to see sometimes that I'm in there. But yeah.
How do you feel about the old, like the original Pokemon versus the news? Like, they keep adding generations of new Pokemon, and it's kind of getting to a point where some would say redundant, or like it's just too much. How do you feel about that?
It's good and bad. I mean, I've found that, especially with the new 5th generation, every once in a while there's like, you kind of look and you're like, well, they've kind of already done something like that. Or you'll look at a Pokemon and you're like, what is that? But then other times they have picked some interesting animals and it's like, oh, that's a good idea. Then I mean, Oshawott I think is kind of cool because there's never kind of been an otter Pokemon. He's interesting and he's especially the character that they've made him is really cool because he's kind of like the tough guy, and then when like a big Pokemon comes along, he kind of goes and runs to fights. So he's a good comic relief character. So there are new ones that I really do think are cool. So it's fun. And then the other good thing about it is that
Keeps you working.
well, aside from keeps me working, like I was really sad to see not only Brock go but Croagunk go because he was like one of my favorite Pokemon. But there's always a chance that Croagunk will pop up again, because even if it's not Brock's Croagunk, there's Pokemon all over the world, so you never know. Like, there have been times where like we'll be voicing, and like I was the voice of Nuzleaf and Shiftry, and they were like the Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald phase. But like every once in a while in a Diamond and Pearl episode, like Nuzleaf would show up, like, oh, I get to do Nuzleaf again, or or Corphish would pop up, and like, oh, there's a Corphish in this episode. So it's kind of like almost like a reunion type of thing. It's like, hey, he's there, all right, I get to go back and revisit that voice. So it's kind of cool. Yes.
Can you do your Croagunk?
Croagunk is kind of an interesting thing. He's more like a throaty thing. It's like Croagunk. So it kind of comes from somewhere back there.
And Brock.
But well, Brock is just basically my voice. But then I kind of make it a little lower, and well, he gets excited. But so it's somewhere in that range.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? You can ask about non-Pokemon stuff too.
Do you play any of the games?
Yes. I played Pokemon Red, like back in the old spinach-colored Game Boy. Kind of black and white, but more of a green screen. I played that, and I had beaten it, and then I hadn't really touched the games for a while. And then when Diamond and Pearl came around, I played that, and I think I got about 6 or 7 gym leaders in. And at one point, because when I was playing it, was when I was working with the adaptation crew, so I was like, oh, I'll follow along with the game so that I can see, where they're going with it in the game, and then, be like, oh, hey, this is exactly like this, what happens in the game. The other people in the adaptation crew also play the game, so and then of course the people at Pokemon that give us script notes are like, this happens in the game, make sure that you don't change, like any of this phrasing, or a lot of the Pokedex stuff they'll be like, this is exactly how it's written in the Pokedex in the game. So, and that, thankfully, Pokedex doesn't have flip-flop to worry about, so it's like, make sure that this is what the Pokedex says. But with, I was following along in the game, and then at one point in the show, like, Ash, like, just, they went into, like, this branch of filler episodes for, like, 20 or 30 episodes, so I put the game down, and then they finally got back into the gym leader. I'm like, oh, I better get oh, I've got to do work. I can't, so then I never got back to it, and then we were done with Diamond and Pearl. I'm like, you know, I never beat that. So, yeah, unfortunately, I never beat Diamond and Pearl, and I haven't had the chance to pick up Black and White yet, so. But